Yeah, yeah. I know what I. Yeah. Um, what? What? Anyways, I was going to say, I think we're almost completely right. What? Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the Harry Potter thing. Um, it is basically a very old meme, I think. But yeah, yeah. It's that. And let me pin that before I forget. Yeah, just in case. Pin and reply. I mean, I think it is kind of pretty characteristic or very iconic, so it doesn't take that long to recognize it. I probably it is kind of hard because it is out of tune and all of that, but it isn't that mm, far from the original, even with all the differences. So yeah, let me put that over there. Let me see. So we should have a read audio, no? Yeah, yeah. We have read audio. Let me now. Okay, then we have the video. We have everything. So now for real. Hello, welcome everybody. As I was trying to say before, the instant I go live, I remember that I had like two or three things to do. Um, or in this case, the instant I decided to activate the sound. I don't know. But anyways, hello people, welcome, welcome. Um, we are once again another beautiful day here. Today in particular, to study, as it says on the title of this stream, we have some more stuff to analyze and such. So yeah, we are going to see. We left on the middle of the last session because I think I went like 1 hour or so, literally talking about different things that were mentioned and all of that, and trying to properly digest all that was being said. So I hope we can finish this one. I uh, I don't know if it is that long or not, but I hope at the very least we can have a great time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have more stuff to. Wait, chat. Hello, stream elements. Don't tell me that it is not working. Or well, I don't even need to be told that. I can see that it isn't working. Um, we might as well need to. Oh no! Oh no! We problems. This is. Let me see. Stream elements. But well, as I was trying to say before finding out that stream elements chat decided to not work. Yeah, we are on the lecture slash lesson 10. We have some more stuff to keep seeing from it. As I said, we left on the middle. I don't remember what was the particular topic of this lesson, but we will see. Now let me pull up stream elements dashboard. Yeah, what is going on with the chat, my man? Activity tools. Um, what is going on? Why is this not working? Chat, here it is. Edit. Can I test if this work or not? Let me see. Okay, here we have it on one side. Yeah, I mean Stream Elements is working, but the chat isn't running on one side. Let me also test this. Right. No, the bot is also not working. So something is going on with that. No, what? There should be no. Okay. What? The copy. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is unavoidable to have some problems. I mean, after some time, we learn to not even um, get preoccupied about it. Okay, this over here. Let me just in case. what was it? Refresh? No, interact. No, no interactions. Okay. Refresh. Here it is. Now let me test. No, okay. We have no chat. Uh, I don't know. We have no chat. I don't know what to say. We have no chat. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stream Elements. We have no chat. We have no bot. We probably have no alerts. Um, yeah, I think the whole Stream Elements broke or something like that. Hello, George. Hello, welcome. We're um we're trying to make it work. But I don't know. It is kind of broken somehow. The stuff decided to break. Mm, mhm. Well, I mean, let me see, just in case. At the very least, do we have alerts and all of that, or will I have to? Let me see. Let me see. Um, Alerts. Here I have them. I think probably if the alerts are also not working, the whole stream elements should be as always. Well, not as always, as it tends to happen sometimes, having some problems. Follower event. Let me mute this. Mute. Are they showing on screen? No, okay. Stream elements is down, basically, or something like that. It isn't working. So, anyways, after some more unnecessary time spent analyzing, trying to see how to make stream elements work, we are back here. Yeah. The different overlays are not working. I don't know. Anyways, no. The problem is, I think something between it. It has happened before. Something between stream elements itself and the signals that it sends to the different addresses of other people's channels and all of that is not working. I do not know why it happens. Mm, because also, as we have seen, even the bot is not working. So um, it is I don't know. But well, um, anyways, let us get into something that does work. Let me. Well, in particular, the music was annoying, but we could let the clock noises go. No, better to mute them. Here, uh, desktop audio. Well, yeah, um, we cannot do anything about it. So, sorry for that. Transition. Now, for real, we are going back to study. And well, I mean, at the very least, I can. I have the excuse of being here for longer than what I expected. So, let me make a marker. Um, Sludge marker. Um, okay. So yeah, now for real, we are on to trying to keep seeing the 10th lecture. It was, yeah, I don't remember. I think it was still about memory and similar concepts, I think. So we have to see what what was it about, first and foremost, because I hold so far no particular memory about itself. So yeah, play.
Words and do that. Same words people remember a lot better because there's a organization that helps you, your background knowledge of what is a career, what is housework, what is a food, all contribute to helping your memory for these items be better. So let's think about forgetting. We know something from last year, we forgot it. There's at least two ideas that people have said, what's the core reason we forget things? One of them is like passive. Well, I haven't used it for a while. It's just not available anymore because time has passed, not been used, not available. That's passive forgetting. The other way to think about why we forget is not that it's a passive loss of knowledge, but that experiences you have after that moment when you learn something will go back and write over and muddy and confuse your memory for the original event. It's active interference of subsequent experience. It's not passive withering. Other stuff is getting in your head that's writing over and modifying the original memory, and the original memory is never there again.
Okay, yeah, basically, I wasn't so wrong. I think it is like the third or second at the very least lecture that it's on this course about memory in particular. So yeah, as it is here, we are more than anything else analyzing the different parts of how, in this case, for the act itself or the event of forgetting things happens or might get triggered. So yeah, um, I think from here on is what we really have not seen anymore. And because I remember having heard that last time. So yeah, continue,
One,
basically.
and people have talked about it in two different directions that you can think about this. One of them is what they call proactive interference, where things from before mess up your learning on something, or retroactive interference. You already have the memory, and now new things mess you up and write over the memory. So memory is threatened by what came before the experience or what happens after the experience in the way that it interferes with accuracy of memory. So here's a fun experiment, just two subjects, but there's a lot of other studies that looked at this. This is the original demonstration, where people had to remember syllables, and they taught them the syllables just before they went to sleep or as they woke up. And then in each case, they were tested, for example, some number of hours later, let's say 8 hours later. And their idea in the study, and there's one wrinkle I'll mention now that we know things, their idea was, look, when you go to sleep, there's no retroactive interference because you're not learning anything else, you're not experiencing, you're not talking, you're not reading. So when you wake up in the morning, nothing has messed up your memory from when you just went to sleep. Does that make sense? If you study in the morning, now you go and you have your day, you go to classes, you talk to people, you read things, all those new experiences can go back and mess up the memory you acquired to start with. So in both cases, you get the memory to start with, but in one case, you're sleeping for 8 hours, it's not messed up. In the other case, you're out in the world, lots of new things
Well, I mean,
are happening. They're retroactively messing up the memory.
Sorry.
And I'll answer. Let me just do the thing. And you can see the people who slept after they learned when they woke up did a lot better than the people who walked around during the day. And that's thought to be one of then a huge line of research saying that one of the reasons that memories become unavailable to us is not simply passive withering, but active other mental experiences that block, write over, and change the original memory. Question, yeah.
Wait, here, something that was also mentioned. I'm pretty sure it was mentioned before, and if it is coming ahead, I don't know. It was mentioned on this class that, for example, knowing something else interferes with your capacity of learning new concepts if it is clashing with what you have already, let's say, established in your mind. So, in that same sense, I will guess that by allowing the mind to integrate more fluidly, flawlessly, naturally, probably, naturally, the different things that have to deal with any part of memory overall, no matter which one they are, mm, of the different things that you're learning about, and letting it go directly into what you're trying to learn, instead of making it shift its focus onto different events, allows it to really, let's say, take apart what you are integrating or what you are trying to integrate and properly get anything out of it. Because if not, um, even if it is unconscious mind, you are changing your focus and you are forcing it to not be present on what you are having an interest on developing any further. So it might happen that, let's say, if what you're realizing in the sense of actions throughout your day is not so mind intensive, it might happen that you could, let's say, still have the possibility of ingesting more information than the average. Because what was shown here is, and also what was mentioned, is in a sense walking as in physical exercise could also help you to maintain the memories even longer. But I think it also, trying to mention stuff like that makes it a little bit more complicated because when you exercise, a lot of times you are doing incredibly repetitive actions, and because you are doing it, you need to learn to distract your mind with other matters while you're doing exercise because there is only so much that you can, let's say, learn unless you are really full of knowledge about how to properly keep improving yourself, there is only so much that you can gain by paying active, um, what was it? Active focus into the different things that you are doing. Therefore, when you give yourself the chance to do physical exercise and even more, you end up, mm, let's say, entering a state in which you can concentrate on different ideas that are lingering in your mind. That is when you can also keep mm, further understanding what you were trying to iterate, as it was said before. So yeah, I think it makes sense. There is nothing really that much weird about it. I mean, almost anybody could say that either if they go to sleep or if they are doing exercise after trying to learn something, they have an easier time. It is one of those very good um, situations that almost everybody has lived by themselves, I would say. So, yeah, continue.
Night and then go to sleep, does just having those memories hanging around in your brain strengthen them? Because you're going to wake up and do stuff.
Yeah, so now there's a second thing we now know. The question is there something good about going to sleep after studying? And the answer is there's a lot of evidence now in animals and increasingly in humans that sleep is a period that fixes memories from the prior day. And if you don't get the right kind of sleep or something like that, those memories from the prior day don't seem to get as well fixed into long-term memory. So this is mixing those two issues. These people have two advantages now, we think. One advantage they have is they're not having new experiences during the night that are messing up the memory they got, okay? And they're having this consolidation period during sleep. People have long studied, like, what's the use of sleep, okay, besides making you not sleepy? And one of the most fascinating things is, and there's just more and more evidence for this, is that it's a period where, because our brain is kind of quiet in many ways, it seems to work a lot on fixing memories from that day into a better long-term unit. Is that okay? So those people have two advantages by our current understanding. So that's retroactive interference. Let me give you an example of proactive interference. And here's how they study it. We won't try it, but let me give you an example.
What?
They would have you hear three words like banana, peach, and apple. They're all related. Then they have you count aloud from 138 backward by sevens for a few moments, okay? And they say, what were the words? And you give what you can. Then they give you plum, apricot, and lime, count backwards by sevens, melon, lemon. You can see all these are from the same category, and then they switch the category. So we said typically background knowledge helps, but here's the way it can get weirdly not helpful. So here's the performance of healthy young people doing this. So this is percent correct, good is high. The first list, they're really good. Okay, occasionally they forget one of the three words. But look what's happening as they go along for the second list and the third list. They're getting worse and worse. That's proactive interference. The experience on the first list is messing you up to learn the new information on the second list. And most of the errors people make are substitutions. They go plum, apricot, apple. By the third list, they're going melon, lime, apple. Okay, because you see what's happening? Because they're related. Now you're getting confused. If I heard the word grape recently, was it in the first group? I'm not reporting that one right now. It was in the one before that, or the one I'm supposed to report right now. The relations among them mess you up because it's hard to tell when you heard them, and they're all related. And just to convince you that it's true, because you might say, well, maybe you're just getting tired, like list and counting. Then they give you a new list, and look what happens. If it's fruits, still fruits, you're still stuck. But if it's another list like vegetables, flowers, and meats, or professions, very different, your memory zooms right back up. Because all the interference you had here about fruits is no longer relevant for learning a set of professions. And it's kind of graded, right? We think of flowers as more related to fruits, kind of, and professions as very unrelated, doctor, lawyer, programmer, right? The more unrelated it is, the more your memory goes right back to where it was, because the proactive interference is no longer happening.
I mean, okay, I think I can say it like this. Probably because the different, what is it, groups of things are playing a role in the way in which we obtain information. Because of that same reason, it is that we end up having, I don't know if specifically a hard time or not, simply um, it poses a challenge for us to absorb new information in the sense of properly, or well, I don't know, properly, simply integrating new things in the sense of knowing that you're still having to do other things. And it will be easier to simply group up everything that you are now trying to integrate instead of simply, let's say, keeping up with what you are doing. Mm, and let's, yeah, taking into consideration that also the brain is one of the machines that likes to be the most efficient thing that it can, it wouldn't spend so many resources trying to get you to understand something like, okay, you have three random words. For example, in this particular test, three random words, you have to learn them. No, they pertain to a category. Therefore, it is easier to absorb whatever it is that they are about. And it might happen that the change is still relevant because when you separate from a kind of object, here, when you separate from a kind of object like fruits and vegetables into something a little bit more abstract, you already need to pay more attention and to change the wirings of what you are trying to replace, let's say, on one hand, and on the other, if not that, at the very least, if you're almost changing also into things like human beings and such, you're even more getting or having the need to properly, let's say, um, reconstitute what you are trying to learn. Because there is such a big change that almost everything is important in that new realm of unknown. Therefore, you need to really pay attention once again with something like professions. Instead, you even if it is different types of meat or flowers, you still know that they are objects. So that is why, in that sense, probably it is easier to learn about something completely unrelated, as it is more unknown than what you are dealing with right now. But well, I mean that. Wow. Let me continue.
Another thing that researchers have focused on is, as we read things, and what do we focus on? So here's an example where they read people's sentences, they actually saw sentences, or read them, and then they tested them, and either for the meaning or for the style of the sentence. Now, usually when we read stuff, we're focused on the meaning, not the style, right? I mean, style, we might notice it, but usually we just, what am I reading? What's the point? Now, if they were warned that they would be tested, if they weren't unwarned, they read the sentence, then you're tested, much better for meaning than for style, because we automatically go for meaning. That's what we go for when we read, by and large. When we think about poetry or something, that might be different, but reading typical text, what's the meaning? We strip away almost the style. We want to get to the content. But people are flexible, and they're terrible if they're asked about the style of the specific organization of the sentence, the word-by-word organization. But of course, if they focus on it, they can do a lot better. This is just saying we naturally go for gist and meaning, and we try to throw away a lot of the specific particulars, like the way the sentence was organized, the style of the writing. Okay, so now I'd like to do a demonstration that will work better for some than others, but here we go, right? Here we go. I'm going to read you a list of words, and then I'm going to ask you for a couple different words and ask you if they were on the list. Okay? Here we go. Ready? Door, glass, pane, shade, ledge, sill, house, open, curtain, frame, view, breeze, sash, screen, shutter. Okay, was the word glass on the list? Okay. Was the word potato on the list? No. Was the word shade on the list? Was the word car on the list? Was the word window on the list? Okay, how many people said window? Come on, put your hands up. Come on, I heard a lot of window. You got a lot of yes. All right, you're not helping me out here. Okay. Smart undergraduates like you, at the peak of your memory, will about half the time say yes to window. You saw this demonstration before, or you heard it before. The way they compose these lists is they ask students to say, what's the first word you think of that goes with door? The second word.
What he said, maybe there it is the list. Yeah, I mean, it gets kind of hard because sometimes the echo makes it impossible to really understand. But yeah, do not worry. Sometimes there is also moments where there is what is it? Because of copyright restrictions, we have removed this part. So yeah, sometimes we lose some things that might be interesting. So. Um,
And the first word that goes with door, the most common one they'll put over here.
No worries.
Okay, that's a trick word, the lure word. And then these are other words that people think kind of goes with the word door. So if you hear this list, and then either you're tested for, did you hear the word window or see the word window? It doesn't matter whether you see it or hear it. About half the time, undergraduates will say, yes, I heard it or saw it, because they're getting the gist of the list. This is all about door and window stuff, right? So when the word window appears, they have a false or illusory memory. The rate of false or illusory memories goes up with age as well. When you're for every decade that will pass, you'll add a few more of those. But even undergraduates, typically about half the time, they'll falsely recall they heard the word window. Again, the idea is, here's a double-edged sword. Oh, you go, it's about words that go with doors and windows. So when you get, that's the gist, that's the main idea. When you get the word window, you falsely believe that you saw it or heard it. So that's the way that people try in the laboratory to create false memories that are experimentally testable. We'll talk about real life ones just in a moment. So we said, all these things make it feel like memory is more the punch bowl metaphor than the camera, right? Because it's all swished together. The proactive stuff, the interpretation, the retroactive changes that are created in memory are all altering the memory based on the interpretation or based on subsequent experience. So let me stop for one moment to tell you, okay, so memory's shaky.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool to have truly photographic memory? I mean, that would be awesome as a student, right? Wouldn't be bad in life. There's only been one well-described case of a person who seems to have truly photographic memory. You hear various stories. Most of the people who are things like memory performers, or there's memory Olympics and things like that, they train the heck out of themselves to use different methods that can enhance your memory. And they can do amazing things, but it's all hard work, okay? It's all hard work as far as we understand it. But here's a guy who was different, studied by Luria, a psychologist in Russia, about 100 years ago. This is a guy who was a reporter at a newspaper, and he would go out and come back and type up the report of what he had seen at some event for the newspaper. And the editor noticed that this guy never took notes. Okay, he came back and he just started typing. And the editor said, "You got to take notes because you won't know exactly what happened, who said what exactly. You'll make mistakes." The guy said, "No, I'm always perfect." The editor said, "Okay, we're going to teach you a lesson about this just to show you." And he said, "Okay." He got some material and he said, "Everybody come around." He's going to embarrass the guy, right? "I'm going to read you something. You tell me every word I said." He read him some gibberish, and the guy repeated every word perfectly. This guy truly had photographic memory. And kind of interestingly, when they said, "Wow, you have photographic memory," he didn't go, "Yes, I'm awesome. I'm a superhero," right? He said, "Doesn't everybody?" All right? He was not aware that most of us don't remember every single thing that we study easily and for the rest of our lives. So,
I mean, in particular, that case of we not knowing that we have very good skills at something is I don't remember what was the particular name of that concept, but it is something very useful when you are trying to overall see what different skills you have as an individual, let's say, because we tend to be good at things, and because we have developed in some cases, or even worse like this, when you are born with such good capacities as something, you can really notice that you are, let's say, good at them, because for you it is almost a second nature or a first nature even, because you can't even control how your memory works. And due to that happening, if you can recall and if you can somehow pay attention to what you are good at and what your average to your own sense at, you might find it incredibly that a lot of times we are not so average. It only happens that on what we think we are average, we see ourselves as that because our own frame of reference is only that of ourselves, not the whole world, let's say. But I mean, mm, if I try to make sense as to why it happens, it might be something related to the fact that, yeah, you live so much in a place, you get accustomed to it. It will be almost impossible for anybody to get surprised every single day, or even more to notice every single day how good they are at something. If it is not, if that something itself is not um, an event or an action that they perform only for a short period of time, but rather for incredibly longer and longer periods of time, let's say years or decades. So yeah, I guess it it is only a lesson to learn, but to properly put it into action is maybe one of the hardest things to do. But well, I don't know. I don't know. At the very least, it's interesting to see that. Yeah, perfect memory. Wow. Anyways.
so he would be presented, rows of digits like these, study them for 3 minutes, and he could recall them days, weeks, and months later perfectly. You could, okay. Truly, this is almost the only case we have well described and well analyzed, so it's really rare. He would say when he would have to think back of a particular list, oh, tell me the one from last year, or tell me the one from 2 years ago. He would have to think where he was and reinstate, so that in his mind's eye he would see the room or hear the voice of the person reading it to him.
What the?
But even 15 years later, perfect memory for a list like this. Wouldn't you like to have that? Right now, I wouldn't mind it either. Okay. He also was synesthetic. That is, when he heard things in one modality, it triggered perception-like experiences in another modality. He could change his resting pulse from 70 to 100. He could change his temperature by 2 degrees by force of will. He's an unusual person, okay? I mean, we would love to discover another person like this on the face of the planet. We have not seen another one well documented. Probably there is, but they're sitting somewhere in some village, remembering everything perfectly, going, I thought you all remembered everything perfectly.
I mean, on the particular case of people existing like that, isn't there a guy who was who had some problems learning, let's say, because I don't remember exactly what he had, and he ended up becoming a famous painter because he had the capacity of, by simply taking a trip on an airplane and seeing a city from high above, painting it almost down to the minute detail or the tiniest of the details. But I think also something that happened, if I'm not wrong, and this guy was something like that, that the process of being or having such a quote unquote perfect memory is also that the brain itself gets kind of overloaded from time to time because you end up uh, taking so much from every single thing that you remember more perfectly what you in other cases could have, or well, not you, a, an average brain, let's say, could have discarded for the sake of keeping space clean. But I mean, at the same time, it also shows that probably there is no real limit to how much information a brain can hold, and or not. It simply happens that learning how to properly have it working, let's say, how to allow the brain to flow in a state like that is, I don't know if it is a skill or not. I wouldn't say that it is an skill by itself, but it is interesting at the very least. I don't know. I don't know.
Uh, uh, So you could think, wow, that's awesome, nice superpower to have. But he was not a happy person. This is kind of an interesting question because he complained that when somebody spoke to him, like a family member, what would happen was he would be flooded by a word with some memory for some list or some event last week, last month, or 10 years ago. Okay, his family member said, "You're not listening to me." Yeah, because every word or thing, brought back a flood of memory.
Well, I mean, uh, doesn't that happen sometimes with everybody? Like, um, a particular trigger happens in the brain when you see or when you hear something in the sense of an experience that it makes you or it makes your brain automatically bring back something else. And because of that, it is that you start to even more integrate those new memories that are happening right now with everything else. I mean, I know that I don't have a perfect memory, and it happens even to someone like me, incredibly average in that sense. I don't know. I don't know. It simply is. It simply is something. Let's say. I don't know. Continue.
He got so miserable that things in his environment would trigger perfect floods of memory into his mind. And this is truly like a novel, that he would, at one point, in order to get rid of memories, and this did not work, he wrote them down on a piece of paper and threw them into a fire, thinking somehow that would work. Okay, it didn't work. So this is one of these, Twilight Zone, O. Henry, depending, kinds of stories, right? Where you think it's awesome to have photographic-like memory, but in fact, it seems to have blocked in many ways his development as a person. He became, once he realized he was had such a rare memory, he became a professional memory performer, and then all kinds of jobs, and finally retreated into countryside, kind of unhappy, treating people with herbs with his wife and son. So he did not have a happy, awesome life. Now, I don't know if in this world he would do better because you could get on TV shows and become a celebrity or something if you could do this, right? So what's the problem with photographic-like memory, do you think? Why is it that we kind of wish we had it at certain moments, but what's the drawback? Well, the drawback seems to be, imagine if you had in your head a photograph of everything, you would have so much stuff that you wouldn't be analyzing it for the basic point of what it's about. So we just said the risk of analyzing things for their basic point, their basic gist, is that we want to get the bottom message and we give up a lot of the particulars. It's not like a photograph, it's like a very small abstract or a note about a photograph that's in your mind. But that's a very powerful way to approach the world because then all your background knowledge is instantly available to help you interpret what's going on because you're using lots of connections and very few particulars, okay? Too many particulars are almost burdensome as probably having too many generalities. Let me talk a minute about flashbulb memories. So this is a kind of funny thing. You might have the experience in your own life of very salient moments, big moments in your life with your family, other things you're doing in your life, where you say, I'll never forget this moment because just everything is so vivid for me. What people call flashbulb in the old days with, or still flashbulb. So, we can never know how accurate your flashbulb memory is, right? You go, I'll never forget when I got into MIT, the moment because I was wearing my lucky socks and it was sunny outside. And you might be right or you might be wrong, okay? So there's a slightly gruesome research enterprise which takes public events that are very emotional for people. So some of them will be very historical for you, some are in your lifetime. John F. Kennedy's assassination, the Challenger blowing up as a high school teacher was going up to be the first high school teacher to do that. The O.J. Simpson verdict. You guys are were you even alive for the O.J.? No, sorry. I can tell you that got an unbelievable amount of interest because I'm from Buffalo. That's where O.J. Simpson played football, so I had a particular interest. It was like everything you wanted in a TV show. I mean, tragically, 2 people died because O.J. Simpson's a super famous football player. Huge debates about whether he had murdered his wife and another person in a house. And there was an exact moment when they said, everybody get on your TVs. Here comes the verdict, okay? Or the 9/11 attack. So here's this funny research business. What people do is they go, and as soon as these horrible things happen, they ask people to write down, where were you? What were you doing? How did you learn about it? What were your feelings? What were the feelings of people around you? And what did you do in the next hour? Okay? You can't be prepared for this other than wait for something horrible. Everybody says, I'll never forget where I was when 9/11 happened, or things like that. People feel that way, and they certainly remember that day more in some sense than a typical quiet day, okay? But here's what they do if they test them on their own answers, so that you gave the information just a little bit after, presumably it's roughly correct. If you're tested a year later, yes, you remember that day better than other days, but it's full of errors. It's full of errors, and people are way overconfident. They say, I know where I was, and a year later, and I know I was with my friend, and you say, but a year ago you wrote down you were by yourself. You go, oops. But I'm pretty sure I was wearing my raincoat, and you go, oops, you wrote down you were wearing a sweater. You go, oops, okay? So your memory's way higher, but it's full of inaccuracies, even though people are sure it's not. They're sure that's not inaccurate, okay? And that's the way, so the next horrible public event that happens, there'll be a bunch of memory researchers running around MIT elsewhere saying, where were you? What were you doing? What were you feeling? Because we need that to be able to verify whether your memory for emotionally intense experience is accurate or not and how long it lasts.
And I mean, there is kind of a theory about why it happens like that. In the sense of when such big events happen, you tend to bring them back to your conscious more. And if in a social setting you bring them back, you also have to make sense out of your particular memory and clash it with that or those memories that others also might have. So if you learn about anything and you see that, I don't know, as the best example was if you are talking about it with a friend and out of nowhere, it, the possibilities of everything getting aligned so that in your memory, the possibility of your friend being there could be good enough so that he could appear or that your friend could appear in your memories out of nowhere. It ends up being transformed to fit the whole narrative that you're not only trying to bring back, but also continue traversing with your community itself, let's say. And by doing that, it is that the different memories end up transforming. In the case of such big changes, like I don't know, in the verdict of O.J. Simpson, I wasn't with my family. I was in the middle of a stadium. I wasn't in a stadium. I was in the middle of a field trip, stuff like that. In that sense, that is what happens. The big ones and the tiny ones end up being triggered because things are so unimportant that you end up simply changing them for the sake of an easier time remembering. You wouldn't really remember if you had a ring or not. If you commonly have a ring in your hand, in the moments in which you need to recall years later, that memory of, let's say, as it says here, uh, Ocean Simpson verdict, you will remember once again that you had a ring because you commonly have a ring. Therefore, why would you not have a ring for that particular day and such and such? So yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Um, and I mean, not simply that it is interesting, there is kind of a lot of proof about it because it has happened with other examples. Like, I guess it was kind of avoided to mention them, but for example, with attack to Pearl Harbor, there was also a study with the Hiroshima bombs. There was Hiroshima Nagasaki event. There was also another study. There are some more data about it than what was simply mentioned here. It isn't that we really are needing more for the sake of um, knowing. We have more than what was simply said.
Okay, so a couple experiments and then a video. So here's eyewitness testimony. There's nothing more dramatic in court, right? On the TV shows or in real life, if you have to be around these things, where the person says, who was the person who murdered your neighbor? And you go, that's the woman, that's the man, right? And the jury's looking, oh, okay, right? Okay, so how accurate is eyewitness testimony? I mean, of course, it has to be somewhat accurate. We're not living in a crazy world where people are randomly imagining things, right? But how accurate is it really? Because so here's a kind of an experiment they did. This is work from Elizabeth Loftus, who's a leader in this area. She would have people just see slides. This is before computers, basically, where a sports car would come to an intersection, would turn, and would hit a pedestrian in the slides. It's not the drama of really seeing it. It's a stage thing. And there would be either a yield sign or a stop sign just before the car turns that you would clearly see. And let's pretend you were in a condition where you saw the yield sign. Then afterwards, it would say, did another car pass the red Datsun while it was stopped at the yield sign? That's consistent, the word yield. Or did another car pass the Datsun while it was stopped at the stop sign? See, you slipped in the word stopped, right? Or you're neutral, you don't say anything. And now you say, which slide did you see? Okay? You show them the actual slide with a stop sign or a yield sign. You saw the yield line, but here's what happens. If you saw the yield sign and you are shown this yield sign, you do pretty well, consistent. But look what happens if you saw the yield sign, you got the question, did you see a stop sign? And now you're tested, what did you actually see? You're pretty much wrong. You're pretty much saying, I saw a stop sign. That's retroactive interference. You saw the yield sign, you were asked about a stop sign, and now you believe you saw a stop sign. That's why it's so important how police or other people interrogate witnesses, right? Because if they slip in certain words, people will have a hard time going back to the original memory. They'll have a memory that's a mixture of the original experience and the questions asked about that experience. So people say, oh, that's just a laboratory experiment. In real life, that wouldn't happen. So they did this experiment. Jim, a graduate student, reminded his younger brother, Chris, that they lost Chris in a mall when Chris was 5. And an older, tallish man brought him back. So that would be a pretty traumatic thing for a 5-year-old to be lost in a mall and have an old man take you back, right? Okay, all right. Certainly for the parents who are going, where's the kid, where's the kid? Okay, so 2 days later, Chris says, the younger kid, yeah, I was with you guys for a second, and then I went over to look at the toy store, the KB's toy, and then we got lost, and I was looking around, and I thought, oh, I'm in trouble now, and then I thought I was never going to see my family again. I was really scared, and this old man, I think he was wearing a blue flannel, came up to me. He was kind of old, he was kind of bald, he had a ring of hair. Okay. Chris was never lost. He was never, Jim, the graduate student, mean to his younger brother, but for good science reasons, told him this slight story. He didn't give him any of these details. He just said, remember when you were 5 years old, you got lost in the mall, and the old tall man brought you back? But what's happening is, our memories of when we're kids are pretty vague. Chris is sort of mixing in some real things that happened and the story, and he's fabricating, he's not trying to get away with anything. He's just creating this false memory. So, and they said, oh, no, we want even more lifelike than that. So here's the experiment they did. They had 120 students see an ad for Bugs Bunny at Disneyland to evaluate the ad. So you're brought into a room and say, we want to market test whether this is a good ad for Disneyland. And then they said, and all these people had been to Disneyland some years ago as kids in real life. Okay. Then they said, by the way, we're thinking about Bugs Bunny. When you were there, did you meet him? Did you shake his hand? Now, what's the big trick about Bugs Bunny at Disneyland? I saw some smiles right away. Bugs Bunny is one of the few cartoon characters that many kids know that's not a Disney character, okay? And by law, cannot be found at Disneyland or Disney World, right? But 1 out of 3 college students remembered seeing Bugs Bunny at Disney World or Disneyland when they were a kid, after they had just seen some promotional material showing Bugs Bunny, shaking hands, right? They sort of forgot, because they had been there, they don't remember stuff. Okay, Bugs Bunny, sure, okay, all right. So again, how potent is this way that we mix up new information with the original experience, so we can't tell apart the original memory from the mixed up, new, relevant information? I mean, this would not have worked, of course, if they show you King Kong, right? There's no way I saw King Kong, right? All right. It has to be slightly credible, a yield stop, but it's a pretty big difference in some cases. So here's one example in real life. This is a real case in a dark October night. A woman hitchhiker picks up on Pacific Highway south of Seattle. A hitchhiker turns into an isolated rope. The man brutally rapes her and leaves her by the side of the road. 24 hours later, she looks at an array of photos, and she picks out a man who is convicted because she says, that's the man who brutally raped me. A few months later, another man is arrested for a series of rapes. She sees his picture in the newspaper and she realizes, oops, sadly, this is the man who attacked and raped me. Okay, he's released from jail because by then he's lost his money, his job, his fiance, his reputation. He spends 4 years pursuing a lawsuit. He dies 11 days prior to the trial. 10 months later, his estate gets $2.8 million because the police weren't very careful how they did the photo lineup. It turns out, if you look at the photo lineup, his was the slightly outlier picture of the 6 pictures. Okay, so the woman went for that guy. So when she's accusing in court, she's not trying to lie. What's she mixing up? Her memory for the photo array versus her memory for the original event. Those two have gotten blended in the punch bowl of her memory. Does that make sense? Perfectly with good intention. And you know, there's 80,000 trials a year estimated that rely on eyewitness testimony, and many, many of those are mistaken. It's just human nature to mistake them, especially because trials are not boom, 1 minute later. There are lots of discussion, lots of interviews with policemen or prosecutors or lawyers. Lots of things happen from the original crime moment until that moment in court. Every discussion and thought and feeling you have from the original experience blends in with the original experience, and it can be hard to pull those apart. Here's another sort of weird example.
I mean, let me there it is. Something that is very, I will say, well known. The fact that this is one of the major concerns when trying to go through the process of convicting people by identifying them. If the who is it? If the one who has the obligation of identifying someone gets told that they should somehow lean towards anyone in particular, after so many years, it is already known that you're influencing directly on their capacity of choosing someone instead of really going by over what they are needing to say. And it it is kind of an ethic problem at this point because that was what I was trying to hold back from saying anything for, because it was shown here. Most of, well, not most, in some cases, if the memories get altered, you can get someone to almost blame an innocent person intentionally if you do it with that intention, really. And that is why it represents kind of a problem if police were to manipulate even more the victims of any kind of crime that needs recognition from the victim itself. And yeah, basically that. I mean, it is interesting to see it, but it is more concerning to see how to avoid it. And the best way to that was so far not even discovered, simply proven to be good is you literally do not interact with the victim. You let them choose freely. If you are interacting with them, the more you interact, the more you taint the real proof that you were looking for. And if you start to slowly change their optics on what really happened, uh, well, we're talking about the law. You should be not completely convicted, but trialed for your actions, let's say, to keep it less negative. So yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, but it is more negative than interesting because there are even programs where people gets interviewed for their cases of getting completely um, mis misjudged or intentionally misjudged for the sake of getting them convicted instead of the real, let's say, offender of whatever kind of bad act it was. And yeah, I mean, it is weird. I don't know. Problems more than funny stuff. So let's continue. Shut up.
Hard to pull those apart. Here's another sort of weird example. A woman at home in Australia, she's brutally raped in her home. She identifies Donald Thompson. Now you'll see why this is a bit ironic, a weird story. A renowned Australian psychologist who studies eyewitness memory problems, okay? It turns out he was on television at the moment that she was being raped, and obviously she's in a very disturbed, difficult moment, and so she conflates the face on the TV with the face of the actual horrible perpetrator, okay? So he has a good alibi, he's on TV somewhere, okay? But, you know, in a perfectly good way, I mean, she's trying to be correct. These things get jumbled together. So you're going to see in 1 minute a film of Susan Nason. So here, this is an amazing story. 8-year-old girl, well, sorry, you'll see the film of Eileen Franklin, but Susan Nason was an 8-year-old girl who was missing and found murdered on October 31, 1969. 20 years later, Eileen Franklin, you'll see her, remembers that her father murdered Susan Nason, testifies against him, and he's found guilty and goes to jail. He's been subsequently released because she says, I was with him when he murdered my little friend. But she doesn't remember it continuously. She remembers it because a therapist has had her think about her past, and all of a sudden what she feels like was a repressed memory comes back. So we're going to show Tyler a movie about this topic. It's your next paper topic. What's the status of memory? So let's separate two things because it's really important. Cases where women or men, more often women, remember being abused, sexually abused, you know, and they remember it all the way through. They may not like to think about it, but they remember it all the way through. That's not what we're talking about now. What we're talking about are the rarer cases where a man or a woman says, I haven't thought about this. I feel like I've repressed this for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And now, more often than not, because I'm working with maybe a psychologist or a clinical psychologist to help me with problems I have, I recover my repressed memory. And it's a brutal thing because you can imagine on the one hand, you have say a young woman accusing her father or uncle or the father, let's say, of doing something that we think is terrible, which is sexually abusing her. And the biggest failure of trust you can have in a father, the biggest huge violation. So he's horrible if she's right. But if her memory is inaccurate, what's more horrible than an innocent man being accused by his own daughter of sexually abusing her because her memory is incorrect? So we'll show you two films briefly, and then
I mean, are we going to see them? Okay, let's stop there. Yeah, copyright restrictions. So much without seeing you, my friend. Anyways, I mean, yeah, it is kind of hard. It is kind of worrisome because it also not here probably, but it is a moral responsibility to understand that sometimes you should not talk about stuff in the sense of you're altering memories by trying to make them appear out of nowhere because some people tells you that they are feeling like this when in reality it isn't like that. So yeah, it is certainly something. Let's keep it like that. It is certainly something, but at the very least it is possible to work around it by understanding that it happens and by knowing that you should let people be, not try to force the explanation to come out of nowhere. Even more because in this case, you are not simply talking about, okay, let's imagine that this might, in a completely impossible for us to live future, it might happen. No. It is our life. It is the reality that we are living. And even more, it is the world that we inhabit in the sense of, yes, there are cases in which this happen. Therefore, might as well take lessons from it instead of saying, no, I can do it. I am somehow better than any other professional on my field. I will handle the situation better than anyone else and I will get all the credit. No. In that sense, I would say humbleness, letting things happen, and that's it. But I don't know. I think that's that basically. Continue.
So the father went to jail. So here's the lawyers who were defending the father wanted to tell the jurors the following thing, which is, in every account you read is accurate, that everything that she described about the death of that girl, Susan Nason, every detail she described was in the newspaper accounts of the time, and that no detail that she provided was, verifiable and different than newspapers had reported at the time. So one of the things that people like to do, investigators, is have the person know something that wasn't publicly released. And everything that she spoke about in regards to the little girl's murder, Susan Nason's, was publicly available information that had been on television or in newspapers. And the judge originally ruled that the jurors could not be told that. And then later on, they retried the father. The jurors were told that, and the father was let go from jail. So there was this huge pendulum swing, because originally, as these repressed memory cases were brought up, people said, well, why would the woman lie about such a horrible thing? It's so horrible. Of course she must be telling the truth, and of course the father must be lying to protect himself. But now, especially in the context of repressed memories, again, very different than continuing memories, the ones that are recovered after decades, there's a suspicion that some of them might be inaccurate. And that some psychologists working with some patients might be having patients think about possible sources of their difficulty, and these memories get falsely constructed. And the hard part, and the part that you'll write your paper about, is knowing which is which, right? Because it's heart-rending, right? It's heart-rending to have a woman who was abused be not believed. It's heart-rending for a father who was not an abuser to be accused of being an abuser. And it's incredibly hard to have direct evidence about who's telling the truth and who's not in these kinds of cases that are so far from when the crime occurred and, or might have occurred, and, where there's such a long period of non-discussion about it because it's been repressed for decades. So you look at that, it's a big test. It takes you into a course, it takes you into clinical complexities of people.
I mean, something that, okay, it finished there. Let us hear. Something that also happens and that is incredibly important is to understand that one of the wait, that is not double sound. One of the main reasons as to why it also happens is, or why they need to be treated properly, is repressed memory might potentially be true, but what needs to remain the most is the intention to make that memory appear by itself, not to alter anything else. Because if we try to force it, we might as well change it. And I don't know, it is a very big problem, yes, but not because of that. One should avoid them. Like, I don't know, it is, let's say like this. The best, most exaggerated example would be also something like this. Not because you know that if you have a gun, you might kill somebody. You should not get a gun if it is a possibility for you. As long as you understand all of the underlying things that exist by you owning a gun, you might as well get one. Not that the final most negative thing should make you not get one. Because by that same reason, another example is, I mean, a gun is already an object of danger, but also it happens with trauma when people get told it, and what doesn't get properly explained things. Not because you own a knife, you're going to stab someone to death. We have the probability of doing something incorrect, but by also knowing that it might happen, it is that we can hold ourselves back from doing it. In that same sense, it doesn't really mean that if you get, let's say, a knife, you're going to kill anybody. Simply, it means that you understand you need to use it properly, and you understand you are not going to, out of nowhere, almost go fully crazy and stab somebody to death. Stuff like that, basically. But yeah, I don't know. I think overall it was very interesting, at the very least, to try and finish it less negatively. It was, as always, interesting. So yeah, very fine, I think. Ah, my man. Eh, yeah, I mean, it gets a little bit heavy when when stuff like this gets brought up, but better than to not know whether they exist and such. So yeah, I mean, even in that same case, going back to what I was trying to say, correctly integrating those parts of knowledge into our life is what helps us to be better, because we know that there is something dark underlying in even in good intentions, and by accepting that it might happen, we also give ourselves the chance of not, let's say, fumbling almost, um, all of our own. I don't know if in this case, yeah, all of our intentions, simply, let's say like that. So yeah, it is helpful. It doesn't stop being weird, but it is helpful. So yeah, I think with that we can properly get this, as I said before, or as I tried to say before, better closure. So yeah, I'm, I don't know, my man. It, I don't know. I don't know. I am happy. We're so happy. We're happy, Maxim, as somebody will say. Um, my man. Yeah, that's it basically. Thanks, thanks people for being here. So well, as always, we are going to try and give this a closure. We are going to end this. We are going to leave. We are going to properly take some entertainment somewhere else. And yeah, in this case, we're going to write who is Speak as well. Who is what is he doing? What he's just starting what exactly what? Huh? I don't know. We're going all of us to discover what is happening here. Um, because I also don't get it. So yeah, thanks for being here, people. Thanks as always. It was a nice occasion. It was a nice stream as always. It was very interesting, very good. We had a great time, even if there was some kind of not dangerous idea, but a properly dark one. Let's say like that. Do we have the bot working? Do we not have the bot working? Thank you, Stream Element, for not working. Let me make it up. Meanwhile, as always, people, thanks for being here. Thanks for paying attention. If that happened, thanks for the opportunity, for watching, for lurking, for watching the bot, for editing, for chatting, for every single part. Thanks, people. As always, it is beautiful to do this, and it is even more beautiful to know that somebody has the possibility of enjoying it, not simply I myself. So yeah, uh, thanks. And well, as I said, we're going to read in this case Ace, who is reading something, I think, and yeah, that is uh, that is the read message. Thanks. Goodbye. Stay safe. Remember to rest. Remember to entertain yourself enough. And when the next opportunity arises, we're going to get back here. But until that happens, stay safe. Do not worry. And yeah, goodbye. Raid and ciao, everybody. Thanks. Raid. Bye.